misunderstood. He doesn't lament the demise of Soviet communism. He famously says, if you're not nostalgic for how we lived in Soviet days, you don't have a heart. But if you want to return to Soviet communism, you don't have a brain. I mean, it's hard to be the richest person in the world with $1 billion palace in Sochi. I guess you can reconcile that and be a communist. But no, it's the demise of the Russian Empire, which he equates with the USSR, which is not accurate historically or factually. That's 315 million people. And so anyway, but Putin is very upfront about this. But he thinks we're predictable. We're predictably weak and unreliable. We won't stand up for our principles. And it's not just Trump. He is convinced, he was convinced on February 24th, 2022, that there wouldn't be a sufficient response in a U.S.-led West that would really damage the Russian Federation in ways that wouldn't justify his invasion. He's still confident. It's taking him longer. He said he met with the then Israeli Prime Minister Bennett was there in Moscow in April of 22. And Putin, in speaking with Bennett, said, we weren't as good as we thought we were, and the Ukrainians are tougher. It's just going to take long. One thing he doesn't think he misunderstood, and that was the United States. He thinks he knows us. He thinks we're weak and not worth the powder.
So before we turn to the audience, Secretary Clinton, I do have a question. We'll go back to the book and the course, Situation Room.
Yeah.
How important is the Situation Room itself? And I mean, basic things. Do other people have Situation Rooms like that? Mm-hmm. And who decides when you go to the Situation Room? Because that may be an important decision in and of itself.
I think some other places do have, secure rooms where they meet, where they are debating or gathering information, looking at intelligence. But our Situation Room, which really has been around since the Kennedy administration in various iterations, and it was, recently updated. It's got great technology for all kinds of secure video conferencing and the like. And again, I can only speak from, my experience, although George Stephanopoulos wrote a book, The History of the Situation Room, and he talks about different presidents and how they used it. And, he says that, like, for example, President Johnson was in there, like, all the time. We used it for not just what were called principal meetings, namely secretaries and heads of various agencies, along with the president and the vice president, but for deputies meetings, for other kinds of policy discussions that would then either be decided at that level or brought up to, the next level for a decision. So the Situation Room was not only used for crises like whether we go after bin Laden or not, but after the Haiti earthquake. How do we respond to something as devastating as that, for example? Does President Obama surge troops into Afghanistan shortly after he's elected? He said that was a good war. Does that mean he's going to put more troops in? The Defense Department wants more troops. I mean, those are the kinds of issues. What are we going to do to respond to the Arab Spring? Do we call for Mubarak to step down or not? I mean, there's just a lot that happens in the Situation Room. And because you have access to video conferencing, you can, talk to the ambassador in Moscow, find out, what he thinks, or turn on TV and find out what Al Jazeera is saying about the Arab Spring. You can, gather a lot of information. So the decisions are really made by the National Security Council, which is the gatekeeper to the Situation Room. The room itself is run by career people, primarily DOD and CIA and NSA, other intelligence professionals. And, it's 24/7. It's a constant hub of information coming in. If a plane is attacked in Turkey, that will get to the Situation Room, and that will then be conveyed to, the NSC and maybe to the president. So it is a place. Now, when we traveled, we often had makeshift Situation Rooms, which usually consisted of tents in hotel rooms with ambient noise to try to, interfere with microphones pointed our way, but to try to keep cameras from picturing us or any material that we were reading. We would sometimes huddle in limousines after they'd been screened and searched for any kind of listening or video devices. So, but the actual situation room obviously is in the basement of the White House, and that remains the kind of, the hub of all sorts of activity. And, maybe we'll find out how this administration is or isn't using it, but, presidents have used it in different ways over the last, X number of years since the Kennedy administration.
They have a signal chat.
They have signal chat.
Well, so my perception from the first 3 years of the Trump 45 administration was we would have to drag the president out of the Oval President Trump. And it was because he just loved being in the Oval. It was bright. He could sit behind the Resolute desk. And being in the situation, at least I guess it's been remodeled since, but I haven't been in the newly remodeled one, but being down in the basement, no windows, he was, he was not as
John,
enthusiastic.
I've always wondered because I know when I used to get my CIA briefing and I'd get, the PDF, the presidential PDB, the presidential daily brief. They would tell me in my house I had to get briefed, behind closed doors with drawn drapes, with, no potential for microphones, which can pick up sound from a long distance, long distance cameras. I mean, so the Oval has a lot of glass.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just
but
saying.
But it's his stage, and he's behind the Resolute desk.
He decorated it.
Yep.
It is pretty. It is pretty. Okay, so I've enjoyed it enough. It's time for you to have some fun. Yeah, so there's a lot of fans out there. We have microphones, right? We have microphones here? So here. Okay, so why don't we just pick here, right here. Gentleman with the glasses, right there to your right, two in. Please identify yourself. This is on the record for everyone. And also, we welcome questions from the virtual audience, too. But please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Raul Gallegos from Morgan Stanley. First of all, thank you so much for speaking to us tonight. My question is for Secretary Clinton. We've seen an military escalation in the Caribbean right now. And we've seen that the Trump administration has also advanced legal argumentations to declare drug trafficking organizations terrorist organizations and to target specific individuals as well, sort of laying the path for us to engage the way, say, we've done in Yemen, right? So my question to you is, given the math in Congress right now, the fact that pushback hasn't seemed to be that great, what are the realistic obstacles in the path of President Trump sort of engaging, and do you see that happening, say, in Venezuela on sort of with a thinking of regime change?
Could everyone hear that question?
Thank you.
No? It's about the Caribbean and President Trump escalating in the Caribbean. What are the realistic possibilities or impediments to going forward? So this is, because I come out of this business now, I can't believe I do. Hold the microphone up to your mouth, everybody. It's a tip. But go ahead.
I think this is a really serious problem that apparently the majority in Congress is determined to ignore. I think that in any other setting that I can imagine, where you have no predicate laid, where you have no briefing, where you have no information, we have no idea whether these boats were fishing boats, cruising, family boats, drug boats. We don't have any idea, and neither do they, is my assessment. Because if they did have an idea, they would at least share that information. They are laying the predicate for some kind of military action against Maduro, in my opinion. And I think that the Congress has abdicated its responsibility on everything with the president, and in particular, without any demand that Hegseth and others show up and show them why they are destroying these boats. You have a small boat. The biggest that I've read about is 12 passengers, right? You have major naval forces in the area. Plus, you can also call on the Coast Guard, stop the boat, get on the boat, find out what's on the boat. I mean, that's the way you're supposed to do it, as based on, everything we've done in the past. But I do think that there seems to be a desire on the part of the administration to confront Maduro. And maybe their thinking is that if they, blow a lot of these boats out of the water and they send a message, they can intimidate him into somehow leaving or giving up power. We have to be really careful about this. I mean, I read a very thoughtful piece about Venezuela last week that said it would make Libya look like a normal country after the fall of Gaddafi. There are military forces, militia forces, drug cartels. So if we're going to have some kind of foreign policy goal, we want to get rid of Maduro, what comes next? And who takes responsibility for that? And are we going to have a giant Somalia on the coast of South America? So I think this is not well thought through. There's not even really a lot. I mean, if the goal is to get rid of fentanyl, it doesn't come from Venezuela. It doesn't come from that side of Latin America. It comes from China to Mexico. So I just feel like, there is a larger goal in mind, and I don't think it's very well thought through.
Okay, next question. Let's see. How about right down here in front, please? And hold the mic up here. I want to hear you.
There we go. Thank you very much. Looking forward to reading the book. Manish Walther-Puri, IANS Research. I would love to hear from each of you the last time you were genuinely surprised. And I don't mean that the percentage was off or it was more likely or less likely, but the scope, scale, or speed of the outcome genuinely changed. You had to go back and revisit the rubric by which you were evaluating, and then what you learned from that. Thank you.
Thanks.
You want to start?
You want to start?
Well, sure. I mean, that's really an easy one for me. I knew that Putin was going to invade Ukraine, and it wasn't going to be a minor incursion, right? It was going to be an honest-to-goodness, full-scale war. I, along with my colleagues, I think across the administration, were convinced that Ukraine would collapse. That as Hitler said at the start of Operation Barbarossa about the Soviet Union, it's a rickety old shack. All we need to do is kick the door in. That's what Putin thought about Ukraine. Everyone thought that Zelensky, at best, was going to be like Dubček, right? And taken to Moscow and re-educated, and then repatriated to Ukraine if he were lucky. More likely than not, he wouldn't survive it. I was really surprised by how the Ukrainian, and Putin said this himself, as I mentioned before in April, how bad the Russians were, the conventional military, and the FSB, and how good the Ukrainians were. And the first time I realized it was a day or two into the so-called special military operation. There's this famous YouTube video of an older Ukrainian woman in a little town just north of Crimea, and the Russians are moving through, combat troops moving through her village. And she walks up to these paratroopers who are kitted out with automatic weapons, and, she's swearing at them in Russian, what the F are you doing in my town? You effing fascists. And she reaches into her pocket, and the sunflower is the Ukrainian flower. She picks a handful of sunflower seeds, holds them in his face, and says, "Here, put these in your pockets so when you're killed and buried here, something good will come out of it." And I called my colleagues, and I'm like, "You got to see this. If this is how the Ukrainians resist, Volva's in trouble."
The Dean?
For me, I have to say it was October 7th. And the reason is, and I was really thinking on October 6th, I had a meeting with an Israeli official who also comes from the Israeli intelligence. And we were talking about the normalization with Saudi Arabia and how, what's going to happen to the Palestinian issue. And that is not going to just be, okay, we just have to live with it. My assessment at the time was that we might be seeing a third intifada coming in the West Bank as a result of that, something like that. It did not occur to me that this would be coming from Hamas, not because you didn't think about the intentions or the capabilities of Hamas to do that, but it was from my assessment at the time was that the Israeli intelligence based on what I understood or thought that I understood in terms of the collection of intelligence and their ability to really respond in real time. And that to me was where it was a big surprise in terms of how the intelligence in Israel has been operating, during the years leading to October 7th.
Well, I have to agree with both of them. I mean, I think that I was terrified that Ukraine would fall and thrilled when I saw the resistance and the pushback. I think it was fascinating because remember, Putin flew to Beijing the week before the invasion, and from what we know and assume, basically told Xi Jinping the same thing. I'll be in Kyiv in a week. We'll have the whole country conquered. And, that was the assessment. And I was surprised at how poorly the Russian military performed. And it just goes to show, do not politicize your